Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order at 10 o'clock. In attendance, we have Janet, Ginny, Lynn, Greg, Shari, Nancy, Dick, Milton, Andy for the board, and for staff, Susan and Sherry. Remind everyone the meeting is being recorded. I already read the 5 civility principles, so hopefully you've all remembered all of them. Absolutely. Announcement of closed meetings. There was one. It was a closed meeting of the Risk Management Committee. It was held October 26, 2017. Committee members present: Richard Shaw, Shari, Milton, Susan, and Chow. The close was 4-0-0. It was closed under Section 4, consultation with staff personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, and other persons in connection with pending and potential litigation or other legal matters. Meeting was closed at 7:04 p.m., opened at 7:28 p.m., and the purpose of the meeting was to review general liability programs and discuss claims. Okay, approve the agenda. I would like to move 10, 11, and 12 up to right after the consent agenda. Put that right after the consent agenda. I need to get those closed meetings scheduled. Mm-hmm. So, is there a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved. Oh, second.
Ginny moved and Nancy seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Disclosures of conflicts of interest. None have been disclosed to me. Move on to reports. We have the report from our representatives of Inner Arbor Trust. Any questions? Yep. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Well, actually, board assessment share, we said 30 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. So I did... One of the major topics we still have yet to do is the whole issue of...
we didn't approve the minutes.
It's coming...
Oh, it is coming. I'm sorry. I
Sorry.
don't have a copy of the agenda in front of me.
Yeah, it's coming after. The cap and the cash reserves. I had asked all of you to really kind of sit down and think about what it is we are trying to do. I mean, what is our goal? And that might help us with our discussion. Anybody? Nancy?
I've had long and serious conversations with our village manager about it, and with some our village board chair. And they feel very strongly that because they're all individual corporations, and although they do get the assessment from CA, that they would like to be able to pick their own level of cash reserves. They feel that they know better than anyone else would know exactly what is needed and what's required. And they feel very strongly that this is where they feel it needs to go. And the purpose for this is, as I had said before, and I hate to be redundant, but the bottom line is, if they don't have the rental income, they don't want to not be able to pay their employees. So that's their primary concern.
Jenny?
Yeah, I was listening carefully to what you were saying the last time. And I've been trying to also, your idea of, what's the purpose of the cash reserves? And if it's based on that logic, and I think that is a concern, or, I don't know, the building burns, whatever, but it's a loss of income, which could come at the beginning or it could come very close to the end. And then if you take that loss of income and you subtract any expenses that you would have had that you don't have, then you get a bottom line of, I don't know, 20,000, 30,000, it depends, that you don't have to balance your budget, right? That's the concept. What I'm not getting on that, if that's it, then we could just logically take a percentage of their budget, maybe minus the CA allocation, which was the amendment that you had the last time that's been tabled. But the point is, you could take a percentage and say, okay, that's going to be held in reserve, and what they need, and I'll make up a figure. Well, maybe I shouldn't do that. It's probably dangerous. But there'll be an amount here that's held for that purpose. I would feel very, well, the purpose that you just stated, which is an emergency or a real
But
crisis.
who's holding it?
They are.
Okay.
It's their, no, I don't want to keep saying whose money. The point is that the village, we come up with a uniform thing. I don't see how you let each village decide. We come up with a uniform thing. I'm just bouncing some ideas off. Come up with a uniform thing that allows each village, to keep it. They control that money. They keep it. But the point that you keep making and that I've heard is it's supposed to be for an emergency or something you can't predict, something you really have to have. So you get, if that's the case, as opposed to what, frankly, in a way has been happening, is sort of I'm short money, balance the budget, not, maybe it's a need that's legitimate, and it probably is, but it's still, I didn't budget for it or just suddenly came up at the end of the year or something, so I'm going to dip into the cash reserves, which is sort of, I think, what more might be happening as opposed to what you're saying. So if we use your logic that's pretty serious and they keep the money, then I guess the next question for me is, well, how much is that really? And it would be X number of dollars, and it could be somewhat predictable. At least you could try for, let's just use the 15% that's in here since you have the figures. That's yours. You get the 15%, it's yours. Keep it in reserve. Then what do you do with, or 20%? What do you do with anything above that? And whose money is this, and et cetera, is the argument you keep hearing. But anything above that really seems like you're really not going to need that for an emergency. You've got that, you got the cash reserves that's yours, which could amount to quite a bit. Now, whether you can actually raise enough to get to that amount is a separate question, but you've got that. So the point then is, do you take that other money, do you then allocate it just to your village, et cetera, so it's still your money, but you subtract it from the allocation you're going to get from CA next year. So it still stays in your village. Or do you give it to CA to be used for all the tremendous number of needs? This is the extra needs that CA has to meet all of the residents' needs. That's sort of like where I'm struggling. And the other thing is the 4 villages that didn't, that are losing on the new formula that we passed. Is there a way of allowing them to keep the extra money from FY17 just this year, so they don't have to turn that in as part of what would be the cash reserves?
Janet, and then I'll
So I think the reserve serves a dual purpose. I think it is in case of emergency, but I also think it's exactly for what you're talking about, Ginny, and that is the ebbs and flows of a business. Sometimes billings come in late, or things get paid late, or they have to pay the teacher at this point, and things don't necessarily, they're not even on the pace that the money comes in or goes out. And so I think that the cash reserve is exactly for that, to manage the day-to-day functions of a business and to protect the business against emergency in the case that someone paid late and now we have to pay these 2 teachers and this thing broke, or whatever. So I think that's exactly why we need to have a higher one, and that's why I proposed a 50%, because that's 6 months of expenses. And I think in a prudent budget, 6 months of expenses is not unreasonable for operations, be it personal or business. They don't have the option of borrowing. And if they have to come back to CA to request money in the event that they would be short in whatever case, that just seems to me to be additional bureaucracy that's unnecessary. So,
Nancy and then Greg.
Okay, so thank you, because that's essentially what I think I put in that email that I sent to everyone. Whether it's an emergency or whether it's just as Janet has explained, or whether it's the unknown. But the biggest piece is that they cannot borrow money. And so they would be stuck, and they would have to come to CA, for example. And that should not be the way it's set up. That's why they are, for the most part, but not entirely. And it's the way it was established from day one, independent, somewhat semi-independent corporations. I mean, they're supposed to be independent, but they really aren't. And I think that's where this gets so confusing and so difficult to deal with.
Great.
Yeah, thinking about this, I would like us to do absolutely nothing.
Oh,
Right?
good.
That's
We
an
could-
option.
Yep, that's an option. That's
The option
certainly-
is the 15% cap that's been in place all these years has, I don't think anyone can argue otherwise, has worked very well, right? I mean,
How do you
No
define
one-
well?
what's that?
How do you define well?
Well being no village has had to, what you have, some of you have said, come to CA and ask for more money, right? And that's what the, I don't know, let's say the fear, but that's what the concern is that the villages won't have enough, will need to come to CA for money. With, again, 15% cap that's been in place, I mean, there's no better evidence of what the villages need than what's gone before. And that hasn't happened. So we really, I don't understand why we would vary, why you're proposing, it's like people are proposing a solution for a non-problem. The villages, it's not as if we're sitting here because several villages have had to have blown past their budgets and needed more. And if you say, well, hold on, the contingency fund was there before and now it's not, and now that's why they need more money, again, the evidence doesn't support that. There's been very few, a handful of situations where they've even tapped the contingency fund. And again, looking at the evidence, they tapped the contingency fund not because they didn't have the money in their reserves, but because it was the correct thing to do. You see what I mean? It was a unexpected expense that they shouldn't have had to use their own funds for, or was a shared kind of thing, so they went to the contingency fund. So all I'm saying is, I'm not aware, and tell me if I'm wrong, of any time, since I've been on the board, I don't know, 8 or 10, where a village has had to come to the CA and said, under the 15% cap, we don't have enough, please help us out. And if that is the case, what is the need to vary from that?
Janet and then Nancy.
I think to say that something has worked well simply because no one has had to come to CA is not entirely accurate. What I think, and you say that this money should be spent on residents, and what I think is that when there's concern about meeting operational expenses, then that's where you're going to cut back on what you provide to residents, because it's fiscally irresponsible to take your reserve down to zero and have no backup. And so if you want to enhance what you spend on residents, you need that flexibility of having those expenses so that things can ebb and flow. And 15%, I've heard from my village that has been a challenge. And there are years where they cut back on things that they do for residents as a result.
Nancy.
Going with what Greg said, assuming that this is correct, or, I mean, I don't know the history as he might because he's been here longer, but what happened in the past, or what has happened up to yesterday, doesn't mean that in going to the future that something won't happen. We could have a bad economic turndown and all of our tenants will say, sorry, but I can't afford the rent, I'm out of here. This can happen. $184,000 of Wild Lake's budget is rental income, and that would have a significant impact, needless to say. What would we do with our employees? Do we send them all away? I mean, personally and professionally, everyone must have, or should have, not must, of course, but should have 6 months in reserve so that they know that they have a period of time that they can reestablish themselves, or they could come up with another means of bringing in the income, because they're responsible for these employees. Forgetting all the other bills they have to pay, the primary concern is their staff. So I think it would be irresponsible for them to not have that minimal amount of reserves.
Milton and Greg.
Well, Susan had her hand up.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just, so just with that, with the 6 months, keep in mind that CA pays 60% of those expenses. So that is already happening.
They don't pay they don't pay the salaries, the income.
Well, you get 60% of your income.
So
Yes.
it's all-
You-
Whatever you want.
It's only 40% that we're talking about that you have to worry about. 60% is made up. I mean, 60% is guaranteed from CA. So it's the 40% on Milton and Greg.
Just for me, 2 quick points. Okay, a 50% cap over time will have those 10 villages sitting on, just in cash reserves now, $2.5 million. You do the quick math, that's an average of $255,000 per village. And also keep in mind that the villages' missions are very narrow. And right now you have villages that are going to be sitting on this cash reserve, and they're going to go out searching for things to do. Right now they cannot show the expenses they need for a cash reserve that averages $255 million. They're just not doing it, including their employees. So what we're doing is that they're stockpiling money, and then it said, I don't know what I'm going to do with it now, but one day I may decide to do something with it. And that's not the way you do business. They say they want to be independent, they want to be owned, but show what they're going to be spending the money on.
Greg.
Yeah. Again, yes, you don't know what's going to happen next year. No one does. But there's no better evidence as far as than the track record that the villages have established. As far as ebbs and flows, I mean, the villages have been through multiple recessions, right? And they've done really well, again, with the existing cap of 15%. If a village has had to in certain years, I have no doubt that Long Reach is not the only one. And I'm glad to hear that Long Reach has had to cut back instead of just blowing through its budget. I want to hear that villages are staying within their budgets, right? We all do.
Well, you
And
talk
they're
out of
not
both
supposed to be a
sides, though.
slush fund that we spend the whole thing. I'm not saying Long Reach is. It sounds like they're not. In fact, I've heard historically Long Reach is one of the villages that really does, look at its budget. But be that as it may, again, the track record, there's no evidence anywhere that the current cap needs to be changed. And Nancy, with all due respect, that the 6 months, that may work for other corporations in other circumstances where they don't have a regular guaranteed grant from the higher level organization, whatever you want to call it. And so if we're going to worry about anything falling by the wayside, anything we need to protect against, it's really only that portion that doesn't come from CA. And so that's, to me, the only part of this that we should be talking about.
Jen?
So I would just say that I don't think that I would anticipate Long Reach, for instance, having 6 months of reserves every year. I think the option to have it allows them to do a little bit more long-term planning. So for instance, if they have something that CA won't be covering that they know they'd like to do in 2 years, it gives them the option of starting to save that money in this fiscal year for projects that will come up and things like that. So, 15% often does work and is often adequate.
Can you give me an example, Janet, of a project that would cost that kind of money that CA wouldn't pay for?
So, for instance, Stonehouse has been put on hold for years and years and years. And so there comes a point where if things, renovations, for instance, that would make the appearance look better instead of HVAC or roofs, they may choose to do those on their own rather than wait another year or two or however many.
Whose building is that?
CA's.
What'd you say? It's CA's building. They couldn't.
Right,
Talking
but I'm
about
just
decorating. They're not talking.
I'm talking about
renovation.
aesthetic to make rentals more appealing. So the aesthetics of Stonehouse have been put off in lieu of other villages' facilities.
So I'm trying to ask is, right now Long Reach is sitting on 100 and something in a reserve. What type of, can you give me an example of a project that would cost that kind of money or more, you say the Long Reach could start saving over a period of years to amass hundreds of thousands of dollars ostensibly, what would they be
I'm
doing
not
for
saying the
hundreds?
project would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Say, for instance, they wanted to do a project that was $50,000, but they were concerned about taking their reserves down that low. They wouldn't do it.
And what kind of project would cost $50,000?
A renovation of a room that weddings are held in.
And that's something CA does. CA, we renovate.
No, CA hasn't done it, Greg. That's the point. That's just one example. I'm saying it gives them the flexibility of being able to manage themselves rather than have to worry about, being at the mercy of other factors.
Let me ask Susan a question, because I'm just...
Could I respond to that? Because I have a
Oh,
question.
okay. Well, then I want to ask Susan a question.
I hear what you're saying, but on the other hand, I have a real concern about what you're saying, because what it comes down to then is, we got this whole whatever process you guys started with. You look at all the facilities and you figure out who needs what, and you do it in a very democratic way, is my sense of what you've been doing. And this place gets it this year, this place gets it next year, and it gets. But if you have a village, and I don't mean Long Reach, but if you have a village that can make a lot of money because they have a facility that they can rent a lot and they make a lot more than another village, then they're going to have the ability to put more into their village than the poor. It's a little like the schools. PTA can't raise much in certain schools, but boy, in another school, parents are writing, pull out the checkbook and write something, and they do great. We've created an unequal approach to how we do things for people in Columbia if that happens. Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and you want that, but it doesn't seem democratic.
Next, and then they decided to do the comprehensive plan, so it was put on hold for 2 years and it still hasn't seen its renovations that it was promised 2 years ago. That's one thing.
I know,
Two, Long Reach has the largest population of any village here.
Right.
And so they have a lot more people to service than any other village. So
Is
those
that
two
where the
things.
formula came in that's supposed to fix that? Because you got more people and, no? The new formula?
Yeah, it includes population, yes. It does take that into consideration.
I'm just worried. It sounds like,
So wanted to ask Susan just a question, because this goes back kind of like to how they compute the cash reserves. I know that at the very end, we basically allowed them to set aside money for certain projects, right? Like the audit, and I guess furniture.
I'm not familiar with the details. I'm sorry. Lynn, do you have any idea of that? Yeah.
I mean, the reason I say that is if I look at the cash reserve calculations for last year, several of the villages at the very end, you can save up for the audit, and we allow you to save 1/3 each year. And so there were so in addition to your cash reserves and all your liabilities, you were also able to save up for the audit. So every year you get until you meet what the audit is and the audit price is. And also, and I noticed in Harper's Choice that they also were allowed a credit for furniture. It was $11,000 they were holding in addition to the audit. So part of me says I think we kind of have a process that will handle one-off type activities where I mean, if a village really desperately wants this great little program or something, there is that other adjustment line in the cash reserve that we do allow them to save money for a particular project. So I'm not sure that I necessarily kind of agree with the fact that I need the cash reserves for a particular project if I have another way of doing it. But I just wanted to make sure, because I thought, I mean, I have seen in the other things.
Sorry.
And the other thing, I mean, just for Long Reach, you guys actually have been very well managed. I mean, I've seen your budgets year after year. But also, you're getting a really significant increase in money. I mean, which I voted for and I approved. So I hate to say it when I hear I'm going to you're going to get a whole lot more money, and now you want to save, even more money for some other project, I'm thinking like, oh, well, if you weren't getting, if you weren't getting the large increase, I might have a little more sympathy, but Milton, Janet, and
Janet.
sorry, Janet, you can go.
John, you've spoken more than anyone. You're being like me tonight, where I'm usually,
Yes, but I had my hand up and I held it up for a significant period of time.
I messed up.
I wanted to say simply, yes, one, we are very well managed and our village is incredibly fiscally responsible and,
It is.
are very frugal. There's no lavish spending going on. And so I hear what you're saying, Andy, and that may be true, but, based on on experience, the 15% is a concern. And so I hear that a lot of people are not in favor of 50, and I get that, but I really think that 15 at least needs to go to the recommended 30 to provide the flexibility that villages have just in terms of how things come and go within the expenses.
Milton and Greg and then Shari and Dick.
Just one point
Okay,
that
wait.
I believe that I would be remiss if I don't bring up to the board. What I'm sitting here listening to the board of directors for the Columbia Association, which is the community-wide organization for the Columbia community, lobbying for money to go to their respective villages. I acknowledge you are represented by those villages, where the villages, they don't know what they're going to be doing with the money. We have capital projects that you have seen had to be put on hold, had to be cut. We're going through a process right now with the operating budget where Susan is sending out an email telling the departments they have to cut their operating requests. But you're sitting here lobbying for your respective villages, and you're supposed to be the governing body for a community-wide organization. Okay.
Okay, Greg and Shari and Dick and Nancy.
Yeah, and I just want to second what Milton just said. And it sort of goes back to making sure this money, where's the best place for it to serve residents that are paying it? And it's at the community level. It's not a level that prefers one village over another. It's a level that says, someone said, we're prioritizing all of our needs, all of our residents' desires, and we're able to, after doing that, to then allocate money to these particular purposes. That's our, duty and obligation here. If what I again would prefer, again, just looking back at the years I've been on the board, we just have never seen a village come in here and say, please help us. This 15% cap is killing us, or is interfering with what we're trying to do. Here's how. This 15% cap prevented us from doing X, Y, and Z. Because this 15% cap, we couldn't put on this program for our residents. Again, it's just never happened. At least for the time I've been on the board, I've never heard of it happening in the past. What I would prefer is that we allow the current system to continue. And if a village does, if Longreach or Owen Brown, whoever, has a problem and says, my God, because of this, whether it's the new formula or it's some other need or something that's come up, we now need to look at bumping up this cap. Fine, but as several people have said, the demonstrated need is not there. It's just, here's what I want, here's what I'd like to have because of what might happen. But the demonstrated need, no one's come forward with it.
Shari, Dick, and then Nancy.
Yeah, I was going to say, I just wanted to speak a little bit to what Ginny said. In the past, and again, this is just, looking over time, comparing the village associations, it's apples and oranges and pears and grapes, and we come of all different sizes, and we come with all different capabilities. I know for my village, we are very constrained by what we can do in a small facility. We run a lot of community events, and they're really a lot of fun, and we've had to be very creative about that. But we're really constrained by the facility itself. Having said that, we are like totally booked. So people do come. The rentals have been great, and I give my village manager and the staff there just kudos. But we know we're limited. And so in that sense, there are other facilities that have more options, and because of that, it's just like with the school situation. You're absolutely right about that. The issue of parity, the issue of the newest place gets the the ramped up computers, and then how do we bring the other guys up over time? And it how can I put this? We really want to work together. I think just as Milton is, I think, truly concerned about our supporting our job here for CA as a whole. I really want to see us pull together as villages and not get into a situation where we have haves and have-nots or higher and lower. And I think CA is really trying to do a good job with that in terms of looking at the assessment and making these adjustments. So, I can see going up to a 30% cap. I know that my village has always returned money every year because we're very, very frugal, and we really try to stay, and we plan for everything for years. But with that, because there is no contingency plan, I think it would make people feel more secure if they had a little bit more that they could set aside. But it doesn't need to be unlimited. It doesn't need to be more than that. And it could be, let's say, an experiment, 30%, and then we come back in 3 years and we look at it and we look and see if anybody has needed to use it for legal reasons or anything of that kind, or a sudden recession, God forbid, or whatever it is. Because it's been a recommendation, I have to believe that the people who worked on this thought there was a good reason for that 30%. And so I can see that being a middle ground, and I just offer that out as being a middle ground.
Well, I agree with Milton that we do represent Columbia as a whole, but we also are the voice of our villages, and when our villages have concerns, it's our duty to bring that to the attention of the board, and not just on behalf of our own villages, but all of the villages have specific needs. Andy and I were at the River Hill board meeting the other day, and they're actually eating into their reserves just to meet their.
Turns out they're not.
They're not. Okay, well then, cancel that thought.
Don't
Cancel that thought. But anyway, the villages are where the rubber meets the road. That's the closest the ordinary Columbia resident has to the overall organization. And so I'm going to tell you what my board feels, and I just want to throw that into the mix. They are very unhappy with the new rules. They're particularly unhappy with the fact that Columbia is taking away 50% of the contingency fund. They feel that the money does belong to the villages, and I wanted to share Sherry's memo on the subject, but I was told that it was privileged and confidential, and I couldn't share that with my board, but that might have helped them understand where the association is coming from on who owns that money. So,
board, by the way, Dick, you folks are the ones who have the ability
Right. Well,
to release the document.
That has been taken in a closed meeting.
I sent an email back asking if this was something I could share with my village. I was told.
I understand, and it's confidential until this board decides otherwise.
Okay. But as I said, I would have liked to have been able to share that with them so they could understand where everybody was coming from. And so I'm going to support my board on this, and I would certainly think that if they think that they should be getting 30% cap, I'm going to go along with that.
Nancy.
I just wanted to give a specific as to why Wildlife wanted the to have the 6 months, primarily because of the health care, which they had to inform, I guess, today or tomorrow. They had to make it. The decision had to have been made as to whether or not we were going to go to 30-hour a week or just stay at 37.5. And because of not knowing about what was going to happen, we have an aging staff. We have one particular staff member who is not well in Wild Lake. And so if we have to replace someone, and if they come on at 30 hours, and if they come on, let's say, next month, for example, we would be paying for them up until CA takes over on May 1st. So
How much money is that?
I don't remember, but it was several $1,000s, $15,000, or I'm not sure what it was. It was a bunch of
And your
money.
current reserve is about 80 something, isn't it? I mean, you see my point. It's like,
But this is one individual. I mean, if
100
something happens, this is just one indication of one possible need. And if it happens in June, then we have from June till May 1st, the following May 1st, to pay for someone. And that's why they did not choose to go with the medical at 30 hours, although everybody on the board was very concerned about this because we understand how important healthcare is. This is just one issue. This is the one big issue that they are very concerned about.
Okay, so we had 30 minutes of discussion. I'm just going to move on a little bit, and then we'll take it up again with the
We call a question?
no, we're in discussion. We haven't gone yet. We will. So we're going to talk about it in a couple minutes. Let me finish the rest of the agenda, because we still have it. All right, board action consent agenda, approval of the minutes. Hearing no objection, they're approved.
Whoa. There was a...
Well, actually, you already approved the agenda, so.
Well, no, I'm talking about the approving the minutes.
Yeah.
I have here the thing that I think has my vote misrecorded here, and that's in the motion to only vote on whether to approve the inclusion, blah, blah, blah.
We can't hear you, or I can't hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. There's an item here where I'm listed as being against when I believe that I'm pretty sure I voted for, so I would like to correct.
What line? Under 8?
Yeah,
Board
this is
vote?
line 123.
120.
You voted for?
If I didn't, I was crazy.
But Dick, there's a difference between whether
No,
you.
I'm pretty sure I did.
want-
I'm almost positive I did. And maybe we have to check the video or something, but no, I did not vote. I do not think I voted against that.
You should do. You're in the very back. Before the tracking form.
Actually, on another vote, Janet's motion, it's line about 130. I am voting for it. I thought you guys, well, anyway, I thought maybe I voted against it. Is there any way of checking that, or we got to move on from here? I should have.
It's all recorded, yeah. Sure.
And this is exactly what you listened to.
I trust Valerie.
Okay.
It's like really fainted.
Yeah, thank you.
Andy had not announced who
That's-
voted how. So when I was listening, I heard somebody whisper, "Oh yeah, she voted for that." So, but there's no problem going back and checking.
Okay.
All right, so we'll hold off then, and we'll check.
Would you please? I appreciate that.
And please, if you find something like that,
Let you know.
send an email in early,
I
because we can
just-
check all this
I
stuff.
just noticed.
Right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, Dan.
Because we could easily do that. So we'll hold this off until next meeting. All right. So I'd like to entertain a motion to hold 3 closed meetings of the CA Board of Directors, one following the BOC, one following our December 14th meeting, and one following our January 11th meeting. I sent out an email which told you what these meetings are about. So is there a motion that we go into,
I move we
we
do.
approve those closed sessions? Dick moved for all 3 of them. Is there a second?
Second.
Janet seconded. Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I got those because those are important meetings and we need to have them. Okay, assessment share. We're back on the assessment share. But that's actually for a vote.
I just got a question on this.
Jenny.
The sort of the motion I made at the beginning of this meeting, is it appropriate to be considering that at this time? Which is, there's the excess
So-
money from FY17 that either will go back into what would have been a contingency fund above the 15% cap, or it won't. And what I don't think we've really made a decision on that. What I'm simply asking, is it possible to sort of alleviate the shock to the 4 villages that are losing the most, to at least let them keep that excess, which isn't amounting to a lot of money, for FY17, and then the new formula, while the new formula is going into effect.
So actually, Ginny brought this up, and I totally forgot, but there was a recommendation from the committee which basically said for fiscal year 17, there are 4 villages that will see a decrease in the new formula we approved, and the committee's recommendation was that those 4 villages be allowed to keep the funds that they would have normally given to the contingency fund. And it slipped my mind. I did not.
I think it was Owen Brown, Oakland Mills, Wild Lake, and Harper's
Right.
Choice, but I'm not sure. I
Yeah,
wouldn't-
those are the 4. And the thought was that they would, they then could use those funds to kind of plan for the new formula. That's what the committee said. So I will actually, so that is the committee's recommendation. So is there a motion to accept the committee's recommendation?
So moved.
Is there a second? Lynn. So Ginny moved and Lynn seconded.
This particular aspect of the recommendation, or for the entire recommendation?
No, this is this particular recommendation on how to do the fiscal year 17.
Okay.
I'm only dealing with
Right,
that.
Just these 4 villages.
Right.
Okay.
How much money is involved?
Oh man, I don't know.
The total amount is 138.
I think 138. I think it's
That's the total, though.
that's a
I don't-
That's a
total. Yeah,
total.
that's a total. That's not.
It's 130
For all 10 villages?
No,
or just
that's
for
all
4?
10. That's all
Just
10. But
for all 10, but
So what are the 4 again?
Wild Lake, Harper's Choice, Oakland Mills, and Owen Brown.
Suggesting that everything that would have gotten paid into the contingency fund goes to those 4 villages, or just
No,
what they
no,
would have paid?
no, just
Okay.
their share, no. Whatever they would have put
Right,
in,
okay, that's what I
they
thought
don't
you
put
meant.
in. No, not every, no, that's not a bad, no, I'm kidding. Didn't mean
I
that
don't want
at
to
all.
plant seeds.
No, I didn't mean that.
About 60.
I'm not going to go paint Stonehouse. I didn't
okay.
mean
So
that.
the total amount, I have it here. Give me a minute. The total amount is $60,900. It's 17,000 roughly for Harper's Choice, 21,000 for Oakland Mills, 4,000 for Owen Brown, and about 18,000 for Wild Lake. And that was the committee's recommendation that that 60,000 be forgiven. That's about 17,000 for Harper's Choice, 21,000 for Oakland Mills, 4,000 for Owen Brown, and about 18,000 for Wild Lake.
Where is there an attachment that shows how much their allocation is going to be reduced under the new formula?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I think it was 59 for Oakland Mills or something like that.
I mean, I have the recommendation.
No report.
Yeah, do you have like an attachment number or something? Or attachment number?
It's just the next page after the end of the report. So,
Yeah, it's like page 9,
Right.
No, mine only goes to 8.
Yeah, so 8.
and then right after that comes charts.
So it shows the proposed.
Well, my thing is, I would allow them to keep however much they're going to be reduced, but the idea of just giving them this big chunk of money untethered to that doesn't make a lot of logical sense.
I think Oakland Mills like 58,000 or something. This is only 21. I'm sorry, I got to find the chart. Anybody have it handy?
Yeah.
I
So
don't know about the other.
And there was going to be a phase-in of the new formula, right?
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so with the phase-in, it's not going to be 58,000.
Good
No.
point. 39, I think Sandy said. Maybe that's this year.
The first year it would be, well, it's for Oakland Mills, it's a total reduction of $56,841. In the first year, it would be $8,300 on the phase-in.
Yeah, it's, I mean, so
I'm at 83.
$8,300, yeah. So if you look at the same page that Greg was referring to,
59.
It phases in over 3 years.
It's over 3 years, so you're multiplying it by 3 to get the
59,000.
total amount,
That's not making sense.
right?
So the phase-in's adjusted by inflation, so it's not exactly dollar three
80, I
times
thought
that.
it was
If you,
30.
if you look at the page, it shows you the illustration. Look at the,
I'm sorry, but if it's 59,000, how could it be 80 a year? Is that what you're saying?
it's 8,300 is the reduction for the first year.
Then every year is 8,300. How's it come to 59 then as the,
Because each year it gets increased by an inflation factor, so each year the allocation would be 3%, so it's a
it
mitigating.
eventually totals 59? I apologize, I thought, I was being told 39 would be reduced. That was-
No, it's not, it's not anywhere near
You're
that.
saying 8.
Oh, no.
See, so again, I think just logically,
Yeah,
I have no problem allowing them to retain this money so they don't suffer a loss. But
yeah,
but just to give them whatever it is, all the other villages had to
I agree.
give it back. Why shouldn't they?
Mm-hmm.
All right, well,
It's a good
let me take the vote, because so it's the motion is to approve the committee's recommendation for fiscal year 17. All those in favor?
This is to keep the money that would go to the contingency
right.
fund for
Yeah.
those 4 villages.
Right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, it's Ginny, Dick, Lynn, Nancy, Andy. Opposed? Greg,
Actually, I don't.
Shari. Abstain?
No, I was going to vote in favor.
Are you going to vote in favor? All right. All right, let's go on to the big one. So, it sounded like from our discussion that we definitely wanted to keep a cap. We definitely wanted to keep some type of limit. We understood the rationale for cash reserves. And it sounds like to me the only question really is what the amount. Greg made very good points that 15 seems to be working fine. The committee recommendation was well, actually there wasn't. Okay.
Committee
Right.
recommendation was 0, the
Yeah.
staff's response was 30,
Right.
double it.
Yeah.
Committee's response was 0.
Staff's result was 30.
Committee's recommendation was no cap. They
Oh.
couldn't come to agreement on
They
that.
couldn't come to agreement. There was no recommendation.
They didn't mean 0.
Right.
There was no recommendation because they could not come to
Okay, there's
agreement.
no recommendation.
Right. There's no recommendation from the committee.
That-
Staff had proposed 30. Okay. 30 would increase the reserves to 1.5 million, which is a very large amount of money.
Fully funded.
Well, but they will get to it. There hasn't been a village that has not, over time, reached whatever 15% cap. That's why 6 of the 7 villages are turning money back. I mean, would be turning money back today. What I was thinking is, at 15, it's 765,000. We know they have around 900 already. At 20, it's 1 million.
I have a question.
Yep.
So if the request is for 6 months of worth of reserves,
Right.
or at least for Wild
Right.
Lake, then assuming that, what would the amount of, what percentage would the cap be, or how do we determine that? Because they don't need to go beyond the 6 months.
Well, the question really is do you count the CA allocation in or not?
Wild Lake has 300.
Are you? So if you take away the CA allocation, Wild Lake raised about 240,000.
Right,
6 months of that would be 120,000.
okay.
The cap at 30% would be 175,000.
Okay.
So that would be way more than 6%.
So then but yet if we went at 15%, it would be 60,000.
So what about 20%, which basically brings it to $1 million? It gives everyone a little bit more money, a little bit more room. It would be about 120,000 for Wild Lake. So it raises the cap a little bit, and frankly, it almost matches what they have, what some villages have now. I mean, with close to 900,000. So I will make a motion that we continue with the cap and raise it to 20%, and any money that would come back would simply be credited against the next year's allocation. So they don't have to send money back to CA, because it's like, this gets ridiculous.
What's that last part?
So the last part is, let's say your village is over by $4,000. Instead of writing a check to CA for $4,000, CA simply credits that against next year's allocation. So
Okay.
it's just 4,000 less. I mean, it's just,
The money's not going back.
right,
and
the
forth.
money doesn't have to go back and forth. We just say, okay, next year, instead of you're getting your allocation minus the 4,000 because you already have 4,000.
Sounds good.
All right, so that's my recommendation.
Now, what are the alternatives? There are a whole bunch of alternatives.
Oh, yeah. But that's my recommendation, but nobody
That's your
seconded it.
motion, right?
That's my motion.
Okay, anyone second Randy's motion?
I'll second it.
All right,
Right.
the only discuss,
Greg?
again, as I said before, 15%'s been working fine.
Yeah.
I think the proper fiscally prudent way to do it is to keep going with what's worked, and if something needs to be changed, then it can be changed in the future when a village comes in here, or a group of villages comes in here and says 15% is insufficient.
Jenny?
Are there any conditions on how that money can be used? We're back to it's an emergency, or I hear audit, I read that, is in here for a couple of grand. And now I'm hearing furniture for Hickory Ridge, or Hopper's Choice, wherever it was.
Dorsey Hall had furniture and
I didn't know that because
Dorsey
Oakland Mills
Hall had
went and brought
furniture in
furniture,
their
so I mean, they should have known, they should have asked for an exemption or something.
There's a,
Do you ask CA for that exemption to be able to buy
I
furniture?
don't, we
that's-
don't know the actual
no,
details.
no, we wouldn't ask, if you're going to buy furniture, you would not ask CA.
But it's not in your budget, you're taking it from your cash reserves, I don't quite,
CA is not going to approve
Right.
that or not,
No.
or disapprove that.
so you can just do it?
yeah.
It's up to your board.
It's up to your board.
Jenny, my only recommend, if the board is going to go with whatever it is, the motion on the table is 20%. I wouldn't recommend you put conditions on how, if they're going to be independent organizations,
yeah.
you shouldn't put conditions on how they spend their cash
No, I know,
reserves.
we can't put conditions on it, see, I'm just,
No.
the board could put it themselves, the boards could put their
The village
conditions.
board.
Village board.
Village boards could do it themselves, yeah. Okay.
Any other discussion?
I'm
Yes,
opposed.
Jim. I'm sorry, what?
I'm opposed.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
I'm voting.
All right, I'll take the vote. It's 5 of 11. All those in favor of the motion, which is basically raising the cap to 20%. Okay.
Hold on, what happens here?
20%.
Right, yeah.
Going up to
Okay,
20.
I got to write this down. Ginny, Shari, Lynn, Andy. All opposed. Janet?
And Janet wants to
Greg.
point out that she's doing it for very different reasons than I am.
That's for done.
Jane?
I'll abstain.
All right, God.
What's the point?
All right, so the motion
Back to nothing being
passes.
done, and then it gets, stays at 15%, huh?
431. All right.
How did it pass? It only had 4 votes.
It is 5 to 11.
It's a
I thought you had a
It was
majority.
4-3-1.
They had a majority. It
They had a
passed
majority,
20%.
yes.
Again? What?
431.
they won it.
No.
Yeah, we won. It
No.
passed.
Right, it
It
passed.
passed.
It passed with only 4 votes?
431. It only requires a majority. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Will be what? 20%.
20%.
Worried.
All right. Tracking forms. Oh, that's good. Talking points.
The board votes to hold closed meetings on November 27th, December 14th, and January 1st. The board voted to allow 4 villages that will not seek increases to not pay into the contingency fund in FY17.
We accepted the committee recommendation for the fiscal year 17 continue. there's a recommendation to put that.
The board voted to cap villages' cash reserves at 20%, and any money that would come back would get credited to the following year's allocation.
Credit against.
Credit against the following year's allocation.
Credit against the following year's allocation.
Yeah. Credit against.
Offset against.
Offset, yeah. However, Susan, can you come up with the correct
Yes.
kind of know?
I was.
All right. Thank you very much. I mean, I appreciate all of you being here.
About the contingency fund?
Decision to abolish the contingency fund.
How are we divvying it up?
50-50.
50-50.
50 to CA and 50 to
Did
the
last year?
villages.
We
Yeah,
did it, we
we
did it
voted
last
last
time.
I forgot.
Sorry, this was the only real thing left.
Apologies.
That way.
It was,
But I do want to thank you all. I thought it was a really good meeting, especially the work session on the zoning. And I know that the stuff with the village is always very contentious, but thank you very much for all the work you've done. And especially to the committee. And hearing no objection, we are adjourned.